Hey guys, Lily here. In today's video, I will be showing you a detailed video of how I use the print and cut feature in Silhouette Studio. If you're having trouble with this feature or would like to learn a little bit more about it, then keep on watching. Should you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below and I will do my best to assist you in the best way possible. Once we have the image, I like to start by clicking on the page setup and changing my media size to 8.5 by 11. This is the largest size my printer prints, so this is the size that I will be using. Then I head over to the registration mark tab and change that to on. I will move the insert to all the way down. You can change this to your personal preference, but I like to move mine all the way down to get the most room possible. This way I can resize the image to the largest possible size. So if I were to hit send and try to cut it out, you see how nothing pops out, no red marks? So it's not going to cut out the design, and that is not what we want. So we have to go back to the design part and remove the background so that way we can get a cut that we want. So now we have to head to the trace tab. We click the trace tab, we hit select trace, we have to select the whole design, then it's going to turn yellow. So we have to make sure that all of that's filled in and colored so that way when we trace and detach, nothing from the actual design comes off. So once it's traced, I like to move the design out of the way. I like to highlight in the box and delete all of that. Move the design back into it. So when I go to send now, as you can see, the red outline is going to cut exactly how we want. So now that the design is ready to cut, what I like to do is, you don't have to do this, but I do this so that way there's no like a white border around the design. So I just go to offset, I hit internal offset, and I take it all the way down, and then I move it up like maybe 1, 2, or 3, just depending. So that way whenever it's sent to the cutter, it cuts like more towards the inside of the design, so that way there's no white border around it. Unless you want the white border, then of course you can just click offset and it'll cut the border around it. It just depends on whatever the design that you're doing. So here I am just resizing my design, moving it around, making sure that I'm going to get the largest possible design I can. And so now I need to print out my design. I will be printing it directly from Silhouette Studio. So I just click File, Print, select my printer. It depends on whatever printer you're using. I changed my media type. These are the settings that I use. Every printer is different, so you can try these. If these don't work out for you, then just go ahead and mess around with your printer. So that should take a few moments to print out. If it's printing out pretty quickly, then that means that maybe the settings are incorrect. Mine does take like a minute or two to print out. So here is just a quick time lapse of my design printing out. I opened up my printer so that way you can see more or less what it looks like being printed. The registration marks definitely need to be printed, because if the registration marks don't print correctly, then whenever you send it over to your Cameo to get cut, it's not going to read it correctly, and then it's going to end up in a disaster. Maybe not a literal disaster, but it is really frustrating when it doesn't print out correctly and then there's a whole bunch of material being wasted. So just when you're looking at it, make sure it's printing out correctly, and if it's not, I always just hit cancel, stop, and then just start it all over. So now I will be heading over to my Cameo to send it to get cut. So this is just a little quick snippet of what it looks like. Please excuse the black around everything. I haven't cleaned out my printer in a while, and as you can tell, you can see smudges everywhere, but luckily it didn't get on the design, so thank goodness for that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my Cameo, and since I am using a ratchet blade, I have to manually adjust this. If you have an auto blade, whenever you click on the materials inside of your Silhouette Studio program, it will manually adjust it for you. But I have the ratchet blade, so I have to make sure I manually adjust it and make sure it's at the correct setting. I will be making a video on all the different types of blades that I use, so definitely stay tuned for that. So I'm going to just go off camera real quick and place the design on top of the cutting mat. And as we can see here, everything is lined up perfectly. Everything has to be exactly correct when using the print and cut feature, because any little minor error throws the whole program off, and then it cuts out like not the way it's supposed to be. So just be patient with this process. I make sure I load my mat, make sure everything is correct. This does take a few moments, but it's definitely worth it when you get a nice cutout. So here is just a quick snippet of the Cameo going to work. It's going to read the registration marks first, and once it reads them, it's going to cut it out. This process does take a few minutes, it just depends on your design. And then once the program is done cutting, we're just going to unload the mat. And then once we unload the mat, whenever we remove the heat transfer paper, it should just lift off fairly easily. There should be no problems. And then now we're going to remove all the excess paper. So what I like to do is I just get like the tip of the weeding tool, lift up the corner of the paper, pull up, and it should lift fairly easily. And when you're doing this, you should see that the design is still intact, it's still in place. You're just removing all the excess white. And now we have to remove the design. I just like to slowly peel at it and make sure that I'm only lifting the paper. I don't want to cause any tears. It is very thin, but it lifts up fairly easily, as we can see here. And once it's all removed, this little guy is ready to be pressed onto a t-shirt. So for this portion of the video, I'm just going to press my shirt for 5 seconds to remove all the moisture out of the shirt. Once I'm done with that, I like to grab a lint roller and just roll over the whole t-shirt. I like to do this just in case there's any little fuzzies, little pieces of hair, anything left behind that I can't see. I put a piece of parchment paper on the design. And now it's time to center the design. Everyone does this different, whatever works best for you. Since this is a small design on a small t-shirt, I can kind of eyeball it. I can get a ruler. And on top of the parchment paper, I place a piece of Teflon sheet. I do this to protect my t-shirt and my heat press. Now I'm just waiting for my heat press to heat up. I set it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and the directions for my heat transfer vinyl paper says to press it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, heavy pressure for 30 seconds. Once it's done, I remove the piece of Teflon sheet. I just shake it a little bit, let it cool down for a few seconds, and while it's still warm, it directs us to stretch out the t-shirt, so this way it gives it not so I guess a rough of a feel. That's it, it's all done. This is the way it looks, this is the way it turns out. Very, very nice. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Should you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them down below and I will do my best to assist you in the best way possible. I do have Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I would greatly appreciate the support over there. I hope this video was helpful. Should you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below and I will do my best to assist you. Thank you so much for watching.